James Carter had been around horses his entire life. Growing up on a ranch in the vast, rolling landscapes of Texas, he had spent countless hours caring for them, training them, and forming unbreakable bonds with them. To James, horses weren't just animals. They were companions, partners, and, in many ways, family. Among them, his prized stallion, Thunder, stood above the rest, a magnificent creature with a shimmering black coat and a strength that commanded admiration. Thunder was not just the fastest horse James had ever owned. He was the heart and soul of the ranch. But lately, something wasn't right. Every morning, James would step into the stable only to find Thunder completely drained of energy. His once powerful legs trembled beneath him, his body drenched in sweat, his breathing heavy and labored. It was as if he had been galloping at full speed all night long. James was baffled. He hadn't ridden Thunder for days, nor had anyone else on the ranch. There were no signs of illness, no fever, no wounds, no strange behavior other than his inexplicable exhaustion. Growing increasingly concerned, James called the veterinarian to examine Thunder, hoping for an answer. But when the results came back, they only deepened the mystery. Thunder was in perfect health. There was no logical explanation for why, every morning, he looked like he had just run a grueling marathon. James couldn't shake the feeling that something was happening when he wasn't looking. The thought gnawed at him all day, the unease growing heavier with each passing hour. He found himself replaying every possibility in his mind. Was someone sneaking onto his property? Was Thunder somehow escaping at night? Was there something more unnatural at play? The questions refused to let him rest. Determined to get to the bottom of the mystery, he decided to install a surveillance camera in the stable, a silent observer that would capture anything unusual happening in the dead of night. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the Texas sky darkened to a deep shade of indigo, James carefully set up the camera, making sure it had a clear view of Thunder's stall and the stable doors. As he secured the last adjustment, he ran a reassuring hand along Thunder's sleek coat. "We'll figure this out, boy," he murmured before turning off the lights and heading back to his house. Lying in bed that night, he found sleep elusive. His mind raced with anticipation, his heart pounding with curiosity and apprehension. What would the footage reveal? At the break of dawn, James awoke with a start, as if his body had been waiting for the moment. He hurried to his laptop, barely able to contain his eagerness as he clicked on the recording. The screen flickered to life, showing the stable in stillness. The minutes passed, the silence stretching, and then something happened that made James sit bolt upright. The stable doors creaked open ever so slowly, as if guided by an unseen force. For a moment, nothing but darkness lingered beyond the entrance. Then, from the shadows, a figure emerged. James squinted at the screen, his breath catching in his throat. It was a teenager, no older than 16, wearing a worn-out cowboy hat and tattered clothes. His movements were deliberate, almost rehearsed, as he stepped forward and approached Thunder's stall. James watched in stunned silence as the boy reached out, his hands gentle and practiced, whispering something inaudible to the stallion. Thunder, instead of recoiling, responded with a quiet snort, as if he recognized the visitor. With a quiet efficiency that spoke of experience, the boy retrieved a saddle, placed it carefully on Thunder's back, and did something that sent a jolt of disbelief through James. He mounted the horse and rode straight out of the stable. James was glued to the screen, his eyes darting after the figures as they vanished into the open fields. Under the silver glow of the moon, Thunder and the boy galloped like spirits set free, their silhouettes cutting across the endless landscape. It wasn't just a casual ride. The boy rode Thunder hard, urging him into a full sprint, leaping over fences, tearing through the hills with breathtaking speed. For nearly 2 hours, he pushed Thunder to his limits, guiding him with a natural skill that was both mesmerizing and infuriating. This wasn't an accident. This had been happening for nights. Just before dawn, the boy returned, leading Thunder back into the stable with the same careful precision as before. He dismounted, removed the saddle, and ran a hand along the stallion's neck in a gesture of gratitude. Then, as swiftly as he had arrived, he disappeared into the night, leaving no trace of his presence behind. James sat frozen, his mind struggling to process what he had just witnessed. Who was this boy? Why was he sneaking onto his property night after night to ride Thunder? What drove him to take such a risk? That night, James decided he needed answers, face to face. Armed with a flashlight and, for safety's sake, his rifle, he stationed himself near the stable, hidden in the darkness, his pulse steady but alert. The ranch was silent, the air thick with tension. Then, right on cue, the stable doors creaked open. James tightened his grip on the flashlight. A small figure slipped inside, just as before. With a swift motion, James flicked on the light. "Stop right there!" His voice rang out, firm and unyielding. The boy froze, his eyes wide with fear, locked onto James. He looked even thinner in person, his clothes worn down by time and hardship, his face smeared with dirt. There was a rawness in his expression, something beyond guilt or defiance, something closer to desperation. "Who are you?" James demanded, stepping forward. "And why are you riding my horse?" The boy hesitated, shifting uncomfortably under the light. Then, with a deep breath, he lowered his head. "I'm Tommy, sir," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't mean no harm. I love horses." He paused, his fingers clutching at the frayed edges of his shirt. "I used to have one, but my family lost everything. Thunder, he reminds me of my old horse. I thought, if I rode him at night, you'd never know." James studied the boy, his initial anger wavering. The more he looked, the more he saw. A kid who had lost something precious, a boy who had nowhere to turn. Tommy wasn't a thief. He wasn't a troublemaker. He was just a kid longing for something that had been taken from him. After a long silence, James let out a heavy sigh. "You love horses, huh?" Tommy nodded eagerly, his hope flickering like a fragile flame. James crossed his arms. "How about this? You work for me, take care of Thunder, train him properly during the day, like a real rancher." Tommy's breath hitched, his eyes lit up with disbelief. "You mean it?" James nodded. "But no more sneaking around at night. We do this the right way. Deal?" A grin slowly spread across Tommy's face, one of pure joy, relief, and gratitude. "Deal." From that moment on, Thunder was no longer exhausted in the mornings. Instead, he had a new friend, a young ranch hand who cared for him under the bright Texas sun. And for Tommy, he had finally found more than just a horse to ride. He had found a place to belong,